Now we have our two short ends tacked in place. Now we need to put in our permanent stitch. To help us sew a straight line, I suggest you use a ruler and a light pencil, not a very thick pencil, something with a light nib, and just draw a pencil line, good morning Emer, across your approximately a centimetre from the edge. This line that we're going to permanently stitch, we will be making what's called a seam. This area here, between our sewing line and the outside, this area here is called a seam allowance. And a seam allowance is important because it helps to give the garment a bit of strength. If we stitch too close to the edge, for example, if we stitch too close to the edge, the risk is that the fabric, during wear and use, that the seam will come apart. So we always leave a seam. It's usually about a centimetre. In, for example, patchwork, which I do a good bit of, we use a 1/4 inch seam because the pieces are usually small going together. So to sew this together, thread your needle again. You can use going to use our little knot on the end, and I'm going to suggest using a back stitch because it's quite secure. You can use a running stitch, and I would suggest if you do that you might do a second line of running stitch. Now I'm going to start quite close to the edge here because I don't want any holes in my bag when I'm finished. So I'm going to sew quite close to the edge, and I'm going to take a double stitch as well as my knot, belt and braces to the beginning. Now keep your stitches as neat and as small as you can. The neater and smaller they are, the more secure it will be. So you're talking about no bigger than 2 to 3 millimeters, almost as the size of a machine. If you were machine sewing, you're talking about stitches, so about that size. Now I've come actually very soon to the casing, and I'm going to do a double stitch here to make it secure, just to give it, because it's sewing through so many layers. I'm just going to go back over that last stitch again before I move on. I should mention too, I hope you all remembered before you start to sew to wash your hands, make sure they're nice and clean so that you're not transferring any oils. And as you're sewing across, just get into a nice little rhythm, and you're using your eye and your hands, and you're just creating a nice little rhythm, nice and relaxed, and keeping your stitches nice and even. And as you work across, I hope you'll begin to notice that you're relaxing and that your stitches actually, because your muscles, your stitches are becoming more even, because your muscles in your fingers are learning. So work your way across to the end. And remember, if your thread, remember to pull the thread along here. I got a little slip here. If your thread gets too short or starts to get short, it's okay to finish off and start a new thread. You don't have to go with the one thread the whole way across. And you remember, when your thread, if it leaves about 10 centimeters, then is the time you want to finish. So I'm just going to finish this one here just to show you. Again, you have your loop into your loop, have our second loop into that. All of this sewing actually is going to be hidden on the inside of the bag, but at the same time we want it to be secure. Rethread your needle, stitch across to the end, do the same on the other side, so that you will finish, you'll have a seam like that. When you have that completed, with your scissors or a pin. Just remove. Wait till you see how easy the tacking thread comes out, hopefully. And you're just able to pull that tacking thread because there's a knot on the other end. And that tacking stitch that you used is gone. And you just have your nice seam across the top there. And that now is holding in our casing at the top.